Hello everyone. Before I begin, I would like to point out some of the claims that my opponents have made. They have claimed that high, the main claim is based on the taxing of high-fat products that are processed. However, they have failed to establish what kind of fats are we talking about. Are we talking about saturated fats? Are we talking about saturated fats? And also, I would like to point out that at some point they contradicted themselves because um, they mentioned very little examples on which kind of foods we're talking about. Um, for example, when they talk about raw foods like nuts, there's a difference between the processed and the manufactured ones. Now, um, if you go to a store and you see a bag of nuts packaged, it has been processed. So I would like to start with this. According to an article from The Week, Michael Pollan in an article in the New York Times, he mentioned that Twinkies are usually cheaper than carrots and Coca-Cola competitive with water. Now this is a big issue in America, and we can all agree that obesity is a problem, a big problem. However, according to public policy, a fat tax, although well-intentioned, will be inefficient and ineffective, as it means tackling the rising obesity. Unlike cigarettes or plastic bags, some amount of fat consumption is desirable. Now, this goes back to the type of fats we're talking about. Unsaturated fats are actually beneficial for you, and if we allow taxation in those kind of fats, we are restricting Americans to gain the benefits from those kind of foods. According to the ERS, spending on food away from home in 2010 was 594 billion or 48%. Restaurants, food service, and fast food account for about 3/4 of all food away from home sales. People in America tend to follow a polychronic time schedule. They do things in different time frames. They usually have this mentality that time is money and money is time. According to an article from the Huffington Post, unlike smoking, it will be more difficult to curb the eating habits of fat Americans, either by taxing them or controlling the content and distribution of fatty and sugary foods. Now, a fat tax, it's well intentioned, and yes, it could reduce the amount of obese people in America. However, the question at hand is it efficient? Will it work? According to ABC News, from an article, Fat Tax Lower Obesity, taxation may shift food choices away from those foods, but it does not provide the guarantee that the customer will not simply shift to other unhealthy options or continue to consume unhealthy quantities of all foods while also getting inadequate physical activity. Said Martin Binks, a clinical psychologist and CEO of Binks Behavioral Health. Now, my opponents talk about medical risk, but is it fat that is causing these problems? What about sugars? Sugars are also a contributor to fat. According to Michael Moss, author of the recent New York Times Magazine cover story, Extraordinary Science of Addictive Junk Food, this addiction will only deepen as the food industry continues to find new ways to get people hooked on foods that are convenient and inexpensive. Most foods that you find in stores have a certain amount of fat, yes, but they also contain high amounts of sugar, and this is what's causing people to get hooked on those kind of foods. Another problem with the workability is that people will switch to other products to evade paying the tax if it's initiated. According to the article, a fat tax in the UK, a fat tax leaving in butter, but not margarine. may be effective in curbing saturated fat consumption, or the bad fats. But since margarine tends to contain more salt than butter, the policy may have perverse consequences on exacerbating other health problems. Now, we want to reduce obesity and all obesity-related illnesses, but we're also damaging our public by providing foods that have a high content of other ingredients such as salt. Another problem with the workability of a fat tax is that people will continue to go for unhealthy foods. According to the article, taxing fat is unlikely to make a stint. A fat tax will be difficult to implement since it requires constant vigilance that our current system is not designed to provide. He talked about FDA, the FDA, like he talked about the FDA and the guidelines that they will provide. However, he did not really talk about how they are going to overwatch the taxation of fats. Another issue that I want to bring in is that some fats, like nuts, are related to weight gain, and if we're trying to attack processed foods that contain a certain amount of fats, we're also affecting people that want to gain weight. It's not only a matter of who's obese; it's a matter of who wants to make a change in their lives. We're also, with the fat tax, it's not efficient because it's not providing its goal. Over time, the cost of sugar-sweetened beverages has gotten less expensive compared to the cost of other healthy foods. Some of the disadvantages that we provide is that people will
No, we
continue-
can't have any disadvantages at this point. You've got to be done because we have 4 rebuttals to hear from, 12 minutes, and that's about how much time we have. So go ahead and have a seat.
Okay.